So, hello everyone. It has been a few weeks since our last stream, and for today's impromptu session, what we're going to do is take a look at, as you can see on the screen, we have SketchUp, and it's got a sample or example file. And what we're going to do is export that from SketchUp. It's SketchUp Make, I should point out, not SketchUp Pro. Speaking of which, so first, before we start, a public service announcement. The following presentation is for informational purposes only and not an endorsement of what follows. Use at your own risk, so don't stick your finger in a light socket. Oh, hello, Black Widow, Wolf. So, one of the big bugbears of SketchUp is that it's difficult to create content for IMVU and then get that into IMVU through export-import process. But there is a way to do it. If you have SketchUp Pro, this may work, but someone that uses SketchUp or is familiar with SketchUp will need to test this to see if it actually works. But using SketchUp Make, which is the freebie version, so the PSA is because, if you don't know, SketchUp Make is not supposed to be used in a commercial context. So if you use it to do something for IMVU and you are selling your meshes or selling products, then you could end up in trouble. I don't know anyone that actually has been in trouble over this, but the theory is that you could be. So, although this will work, it should work, again, you'll need to double check and do all your testing. So the scene that we've got on screen is what was set up as a reference file. So this isn't available yet. I'll put all the files into a zip file and make it available on Catsbits or wherever, and link to that in the video description. But this is essentially a reference file, and it replicates exactly, it's exactly the same, except as far as I'm aware, SketchUp doesn't have a proxy, or it doesn't have an object that is a null object that's just a reference point. So in Blender we have empties, so this is an empty. But in 3D Studio Max they're called nodes. So for all intents and purposes these are nodes. But SketchUp doesn't have an approximate version of that from the point of view of an object. So each of these nodes has been converted into a mesh object, or SketchUp's equivalent of a mesh object, and just turned into a mesh object. And these have been given the default names for whatever it is that they represent. So we've got handle 02, handle 01, picture, seats, which are the big ones, and catcher and picture, the small ones at the front. And the structure, so we've got the root object, although that's highlighted the entire thing, but the root object is this red one, and it sits on the ground plane, or its center of mass sits on the ground plane. So if we look in Blender and select the origin, which is the point that you can just about see where the widget is, that is grid center in Blender. So the SketchUp file is an exact replica of this scene. So if you were to export this and get it into 3D Studio Max, it would be exactly the same as well. So you would still have the node at the center of the world. So in SketchUp, although the objects are all in the right place, the origins differ. And they're actually this, is that bottom? So it's this way around. So that's bottom front right. Bottom front right corner is where the object's origin is. I don't know if that can be shifted around in SketchUp. I don't know enough about SketchUp to know whether you can do that. But for all intents and purposes, bringing in this furniture file, furniture starter file, you'll get this. So we've got the hierarchy, which is important for furniture. So root is the master object. And as with all furniture, everything is parented or linked to the root node. And that's important for this to work. If this isn't set up that way, this won't work. So I'll just go through the process quickly. Not quickly, but just go through the process. So what we have to do first, object selection is not necessary, but you can do that if you want. So file, export 3D model, and that'll give us the usual Windows dialog. Give your file a name, and of course it will be, for SketchUp Make users, select DAE. That's a collada file. Click on options just to check the options, and essentially we only need to preserve the hierarchy and make sure that everything is triangulated, although the importer for IMVU understands, well, it will triangulate the meshes when it's importing them. So make sure those two are set, so that's preserve component hierarchies and triangulate all faces. So OK. And then just export. This will just rewrite, it'll overwrite this. So OK, this is now producing a DAE file, which is relatively quick and straightforward for a small file. So once you've got your DAE, the next step is to convert it. And for that, we need Autodesk's FBX Converter 2013. So if you just search Google and search for FBX Converter 2013, it'll bring out this little, well, it'll bring you to a page where you can download this application, and you need to get this in order for this process to work. So open that, and you want the Add FBX Converter, and then just load in or drag and drop the file that you are wanting to convert. So where has that gone? Right, so that's furnitureref.dae. It'll add it. You can change the file name if you need to, but just generally everything can be left on its defaults. But just make sure that FBX 2013 is selected. Where is that setting? There was a way to set that. I can't remember where it is. But do make sure that binary is set. Don't use ASCII. You need binary. IMVU prefers binary files. And then just convert. That's converted the file, and it's created an FBX version. So what we need to do now is load this into IMVU. So what we're going to do now is the standard FBX import process. So click your click the drive item. For this, it's a furniture item. And go. Tralala, sing a song whilst we're waiting. There we go. FBX import. Load FBX. And that was the one that we used. So that's the converted FBX that we created from the DAE file. So select, open. And it's going to do this. It's going to give us a very odd selection relative to what we might be used to importing FBX files into IMVU, particularly those that are made in Blender or 3D Studio Max. So you want root, and this is showing 83 bones and 68 meshes, which is a lot of bones and meshes. So select that one. And these are all the meshes that it's going to bring in. Configure FBX. And this is all the stuff that it's brought in. So we only need a couple of things from this. So rather than deselecting the checkboxes, with there being so many of these, just scroll down to the bottom, select none. And what we're going to do for this, just so that we can see the results, we're going to select, we don't need the dummies, so catcher, handles, we want the furniture item, which is the box, and then we want picture, we don't need, oh yes we do want root, and seating. So that's selected the appropriate materials. Deselect, rename. This causes problems for some things, so deselect that. And we want to change the scaling to 0.025. That differs from Blender scaling, which is 0.01. So for SketchUp, if you use this starter file, which is based on Blender, which is based on Max, so there's 3 steps of conversion, but all of them are the same size physically. So if you use this, you will have to, whoops, wrong one, we want IMVU. You'll have to make sure that the scaling, you might need to play around with this a little bit just to get it precise, but 0.025. So once you've got that, everything is selected, that's okay, just import. We'll get the usual overriding objects warning. Click that, then apply changes. And there is our furniture item with default. So let me just add the actor, fellow thespian. So there we go. So get that one sitting and this one standing. Oh no, that's the wrong. That's the one that's standing. Right. So there we have furniture item exported from SketchUp Make, converted using DAE FBX converter, I should say, and imported directly into IMVU as a furniture item. That is the basic process. So none of this opening up an ASCII file and editing all the file names, because ASCII files use underscores instead of periods and other special characters. It replaces each of those special characters with an underscore, and obviously that's quite difficult to decipher from the point of view of making sure that you're importing something that's correct. So that's the basic process. But, and this is what I meant about the origin points. So use my little annotate tool, draw on screen, select the color. Right, so, oh, hang on. Close that for now. Just to reiterate the oh, that's not, why is that doing that? It's not behaving itself. There we go. Oh, that's funny. My screen is not updating with what's being shown on screen, which is kind of funny. But so I'm going to have to watch the stream. And this is quite tricky. So the origin point of the objects is in this bottom right corner, as mentioned, and that's the same for all the objects. There we go. So the seat, the origin point for that is bottom right corner. So if we go back to IMVU and we take a look at where the avatar is sitting, it's sitting relative to this bottom right corner. Whoops, haha. Let me just move that back. Forgot about that. So clear that. Clear all drawing. So if we take a look at that in Blender, oh, and that's not updating properly now either. And this is going to be tricky because I'm watching the stream and trying to there we go. That origin is centered directly under the avatar. So in SketchUp, because SketchUp changes the or the focus, the origin point is in a slightly different position because it's not based on the center of mass of the object that's being used as a node. It's based on where the location of that bottom right corner is. So that means if you're using SketchUp, you can make your object, I don't know why that is. I wonder if it's that. Let me just close this, see if that helps. Oh yes, it is. It's the FBX tool. Very odd. So let me just open a example. So we don't need to save this, so no, we don't need to save that. So here we have a very, very simple furniture example file. So do exactly the same process with this. So we've got everything set up. The hierarchy is set up. So root, the red cube, which we can just about see. The red cube, that's the origin node. And then everything else is parented and given the correct name relative to the structure that we're looking for. So we're going to export this, export, 3D model, again DAE, options, make sure again preserve component hierarchy and triangulate is selected. That's optional again, triangulate. And then export. It's just going to override the previous iteration. It's creating our DAE file, which is now done. So now we need to FBX convert. Right, so DAE, that's the one, so just drag and drop or just open it. So add, if you want to do it the long way, just click the add button. Otherwise just drag and drop from Windows Explorer if you've got it open, or File Explorer I think it's called in Windows 10. So that's our FBX. It's going to produce FBX 2013. That's okay. Binary, that's what we need. We don't ever really need embed media, because the FBX file is the way that IMVU wants them is that all the media is just external anyway. So FBX, that's okay, and then convert. So that's converted that. So I'm going to close this so that it doesn't mess my screen up. So we've now got an FBX that we can use. So create another furniture item. So derive new item or product. Rooms and furniture. Furniture. Go. So there's our default. FBX import. Load FBX. And we want furniture ref example. So open. This will present us with the select skeleton root dialog again. So root 80 plus bones, 68 meshes, and it'll list all the meshes again. Configure FBX. So again, deselect all, and we'll select all the relevant parts of the file in SketchUp so that we can see them. But obviously all we need actually for a furniture item is just the furniture mesh, whatever that's called. Deselect, set scale at 0.025. Materials are okay, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. And then import. Apply changes. And there is our furniture item, and the meshes, the nodes, that represents where the avatar should be standing. So add an actor to this one. It's taking its time loading in. And that is a functional. So that's that exported to DAE, converted in the FBX tools, and then just imported as an ordinary FBX into IMVU. So, as mentioned previously, so the position of the avatar is relative to that front corner, front bottom right corner. So in SketchUp, this means compensating for it. I haven't done this yet, but it's a simple, well, relatively speaking, simple thing to do. So what that basically means is, depending on the object, I have to think. So basically what you'd need to do is create a second set of second set or duplicate? Let me think. Right, so you need these are the primary objects. So what you'd have to do is create, I might have to do this with the with this sample file. So basically it means that we're going to have two sets of mesh objects representing the nodes. So the actual nodes, which are these ones, they will be positioned so that that would mean so let me think. Let me just go back to Blender. This is easy for me in Blender. Yeah, so what you'd have to do in SketchUp, just unparent that. So you're going to need two sets of mesh objects representing, one is the node, one's going to be the node, and the other is going to be positioned so that's there. So the other one is going to be positioned approximately so that so that's what's going to have to be done. So in SketchUp you'll have two meshes representing the node. One is going to be a visual proxy so that when you are assembling your furniture item, you're moving, this is specifically for the nodes and the avatar helpers, that when you are moving those, the visual aid that you are looking at, these blue boxes, they will be the visual element of moving things about. So you will move those as a set, but once they're positioned, or depending on how the file is set up, what you'll actually also then need is the actual node boxes, so that the bottom right corner of each one is center of mass of the visual. So I'm switching back to Blender just to make this easy to see, easy for me. So in SketchUp, so imagine this is SketchUp. This node is the visual aid, so that's your visual reference point, and then you'll have another object with the bottom right corner at center of mass. So if we look at switch to active object, active element, so where that widget is currently located is the node's origin point, or where the node's origin should be, but because the meshes use bottom right corner in SketchUp, that basically means you're going to have to offset. You'll create an offset, and the offset is your actual node, but the visual is, it's just a visual marker. So this will compensate for that offset that we see in IMVU. So as you can see, I mean, looking at the standing node, the standing avatar, she is standing relative to this bottom right corner. So we need to set the node up so that it's offset and compensates for the fact that the visual mesh is off to one side slightly. So on export, that means you'll be exporting a whole bunch more. Goodness, that would be quite a lot of meshes for a room, because in theory this works for rooms, so it's rooms and furniture that this will work for. So in theory, yeah, so you just export everything, and and you'll have two sets of nodes, and one will be your actual node, that's the one that's offset to compensate, and they will be they'll follow the naming convention that IMVU wants. And then your visual can be called anything you want, but obviously make it relative to the node that it represents. And that should work. I have to set that up. So that's that was just a thought that was quite interesting, that it is possible to use SketchUp Make or SketchUp for IMVU. And this potentially means that you don't have to mess around with manually editing an ASCII text file and swapping names out. So what I'll have to do is create, where is that reference file? Is it that one? Yeah, it's that one. So how are these named? So what I'll have to do is right, so what that means then, whoops, so that's the visual. So if we duplicate that, move that to the right, so that's 50-50 offset. So this one, the one that we've just created, that's the actual node. So we need that to be capture 01.sitting. Do that with this. I have to remap these with a slightly different element of the, what's the UV map for this? A quick look. Oh, poop. This is the old version, so that's the thing about appending or opening old files. The default layouts that are available in Blender, this is 2.79, differ from the very old versions. So when you import or open an old file in a new version of Blender, it'll bring in all the old data blocks and references, and it'll miss or omit quite a few of the layout options. Yeah, so that's all right. So what we can do with that then is maybe use the pink one. Or swap them around, because we want the actual nodes to be recognizable. Okay, so if we leave that as blue and change these to miscellaneous. Right, so yeah, so we've got to do that for all of the nodes. So that's our actual node, so that needs the actual name that IMVU is looking for. Yeah, so once this is converted for SketchUp, that should then mean that the actual nodes, these will be, because the visuals don't need to be parented to anything per se, but on export the seat nodes will. But because SketchUp is using that bottom right corner, which is now center mass of the visual, oh, it isn't in that instance. Let me double check that. There we go. Right, so because SketchUp is using that bottom right corner, which is now center of mass of the visual aid, that'll mean that the furniture item, when it's eventually exported, will be correctly positioned. Let me just save that. Save as. And save. So any SketchUp users, if there are any SketchUp users and they know a way of shifting the, do SketchUp objects actually have an origin? I don't know if SketchUp objects actually have origins. And unfortunately, no SketchUp users are watching at the moment. So what would be handy, I know there is a way to, where is it? No, that's not the one. Yeah. No idea. Absolutely no idea. Well, someone that's a SketchUp user will know. If it's possible to shift the origin from bottom right, I'm sure I did it earlier. Offset, is that it? No. I can't remember what I did. It's probably SketchUp users thumping their desks saying it's in such and such. It's there, you just passed it. But anyway, yeah, so if there's a way to offset whatever origin point SketchUp has, that makes it a lot easier than having duplicates of things, and because that's going to get, for rooms in particular, that's just going to be impractical. It's going to be unworkable with a room full of nodes. So if a room has 600 nodes, a big room has 600 nodes, and each node has a duplicate, that's 1,200 objects. And those 1,200 objects all have to be passed on export. So yes, if the origins can be moved, that saves a lot of work. So any SketchUp users, if you know how to do that, then that's all you need to do. Is offset the origin point. Oh, there it is, change axes. There, that thing. So I don't know how you can position this more precisely. Whoops. Dagnabbit. But that does that just change the axis? It doesn't change the origin. Anyway, so yeah, that's SketchUp. That's how we can use SketchUp to make products, well, furniture, and because this really is to do with furniture and rooms which need a skeleton, which is a hierarchical structure in order for the objects to be imported into IMVU. Crikey, didn't expect that to be 48 minutes. So yes, so that was a little presentation of how we could use SketchUp to make IMVU objects, IMVU products. So the essential tool is make sure you have Autodesk's FBX Converter 2013. So search the internet, search the interwebs for FBX Converter 2013, and then drag and drop or open your DAE into this, and then just convert it, and that produces a workable FBX that can be then imported into IMVU. So as I said at the beginning, I'll once I've got all these files sorted out, and if anyone knows of a way of offsetting the origin, that's going to be extremely helpful. Otherwise, we're just going to have to do it the hard way and just use a proxy mesh or have a duplicate proxy mesh. And that's what we've got to do, unfortunately, because as far as I'm aware, SketchUp doesn't have null objects or nodes. Or SketchUp Make, I should say. SketchUp Pro might, probably provided by a plugin, but anywho. Oh, hi Liana. We were just talking about your favourite program, SketchUp. Although it's Blender on screen right now. There we go, SketchUp. So for those that arrived late, this is a reference file for IMVU. We have the dummies. These represent the avatars in their sitting and standing positions. And then we have the nodes, which are these blue spots, or these meshes, representing each of the nodes for sitting and standing. Well, question for you then, Liana. Do you know if there is a way to, like, objects, everything in Blender has an origin point, and that origin is usually smack bang in the middle of the object. And this is useful for IMVU because it makes it easy to visualize and use these objects as actual things that we can export for IMVU. But the origin is in the center, and as we've been discussing, SketchUp, the origin point for objects in SketchUp, well, the origin of the objects that have been imported, I should say. I mean, it might not be the case that SketchUp actually does this by default, but the origin points for these objects is in the lower right corner for all of them. Well, hey, I get to use my annotations again. So, in this, the origin point is in this lower right corner instead of being what should be, I guess, on screen. It should be about there. It should be a point in the middle of this mesh, but it's not. It's in this lower right corner, which means that you have to offset. So yes, that'll be an offset of 50%. Yeah, so the nodes would have to be offset by 50%, or it means using two sets of nodes. Come on. Two sets of nodes. So you have one which is your visual reference point and your actual node, which is correctly offset so that that bottom right corner is the center of origin. Or it's not center of origin, it's the origin point, but it's centered on where the visual, I don't know if you can see that on screen. So the widget indicates the origin of the visual aid, which is matched by offsetting the actual node mesh in SketchUp. Okay, well, check away. I mean, this is as it is, this is a workable workaround because it means that we can produce furniture items for IMVU. But as you're making the mesh, you're going to have to do a little bit of thinking in order to get the offset right. Because as we're looking at this now, for instance, for example, the origin point of the cube is actually located at the center of the root node in Blender. But in SketchUp, that's offsetting, and it looks like it's offsetting. It looks like, actually, what it looks like it's doing then. Yeah, so it looks like it's offsetting. Let me just ungroup all of this. So it looks like it's doing this. Yeah, that's what it's doing. So just copy that and do that and paste. Way, it works. Blender does have copy paste, everyone. So that's what SketchUp's doing. So this second set is what SketchUp is doing, and this is the original. This one. So if we can adjust the origin, hang on, what's Liana saying in chat? Yes, Liana. That's actually why I've Lestat. He's an IMVU user. Lestat de Lioncourt or Leoncourt. Not quite sure how you pronounce the name. Posted in discussions and mentioned that the person that created that add-on has removed it from circulation and stipulated that no one can use it anymore for whatever reason. So his posting is the impetus that needed to just look at this again and try and fix it, because we almost had it working. Well, we actually did have it working with this process that I've been outlining right now. What you do is you export your project to a DAE file and then you convert it using the FBX tools. That's what that's what we basically worked out. Well, I worked it out, and then whatever. Well, hey, we don't need to go there. So we worked that out, but IMVU it still didn't work to IMVU's satisfaction, and that bit, the not working to IMVU satisfaction, is the bit that I've just figured out now, and what this stream has been about. It is possible to do it, but because the positions are slightly offset, it was considered not a failure, but what would be the word? Not as effective as it could be as a tool. But yes, Lestat was saying that mesh out plugin is no longer available, and it's the author has expressly said that it cannot be used for IMVU for whatever reason. So right, well, if you can figure out if there is an offset, if we can offset the origin of meshes in SketchUp, that's going to help a lot. Or if anyone knows that uses SketchUp, I suspect Lestat might know. But oh, pardon me. But if not, it does mean there is the option to either create. Where's it gone? I suppose what you could do, you can either just manually offset these visual aids. I don't know how you do that more precisely. So if you could offset its local position by 50%, so you want it to move. Whoops, that's not the way. So you want it 50% that way, 50% that way, and then 50% that way. So that's what you'd have to do, and then you should be able to export and get a working product. Yeah, well, apparently none of the plugins they're available, so that's why we're doing this. And this does work, but it just means that you have to compensate for the position of the nodes because of the way that SketchUp puts the origin in this bottom right corner. Oh right, it's only available for the Pro version. Well, that would make sense. Which fits in with the PSA at the beginning. The following presentation is for informational purposes only and not an endorsement of what follows. Use at your own risk. So don't poke your finger in a light socket. Well, this was only, well, it wasn't only going to be a short one, but this was just a short one just going over SketchUp and how it is possible to make things in SketchUp and get them into IMVU. So, unless there are any other questions about what we've just been going through, yeah, that's a common. Liana is saying that it's why she migrated to Blender. SketchUp has too many limitations. Yeah. Oh, nice. It's about a 10-second delay, which is the quickest it's been. Right, all right then. So that's SketchUp and how it can be used to make items for Blender. No, not Blender. Products for IMVU. So, yeah. So on import, obviously on import, let's just quickly go over the import stuff so that we can create a little snippet. So, derive new product, rooms, furniture, or room if you're exporting a room. So we have a default, FBX import, load FBX. That'll open up our file, so we'll load in the furniture example that we created. Open. That'll give us our select skeleton root. Make sure that you select the one that specifically says root. And then we've got all the meshes that'll be pulled in. Then click Configure FBX. Change the apply scale to for SketchUp. If you are using the example file or the starter file that's going to be provided, the one that's been used through this presentation, so your scale setting should be 0.025, not 0.01 as it is for Blender. Disable rename. Just gonna, because there are a lot of meshes, we want to just scroll down, deselect, and then just reselect the few that we want. Don't need those. Furniture. That's it, and that will automatically select the materials that we need. So furniture and nodes, and then just import. we'll get the import status box, import changes, and then apply changes, and there is our furniture item. So that, not that, nope, let me just save that. That exported to DAE, DAE converted to FBX using the FBX tools, and then FBX imported just as we just did. Whoops, wrong one. So meshes, so we can add, what's that? So that's the box. No, it's not. That's the capture pictures. So that's that one. Apply. Oh no. Might have to fiddle with that. Where's the box gone? Oh, there it is, furniture. That's odd. Oh, I guess that's going to be a UV mapping thing. Oh, unless... Although we should be able to override that. Yeah, so that's probably have to clarify, set up make sure that the materials are set up correctly in SketchUp, so they use the proper naming convention. So instead of nodes, that will probably have to be nodes dot square brackets or brace or whatever it's called 0, and the block would be furniture 1. And that should work. We'll have to double check that, but we can at least get a mesh in, and it does. It is textured. It's just not. Well, it's an automatically generated one that IMVU creates during the import process. So I wonder if that grey is that. Probably. In fact, actually, I guess that is what that is. Maybe not. IMVU really do need to fix that when you import a mesh, you can't delete the original the original furniture item has 3 materials. And if you want to get rid of them completely, you have to create 3 materials on your object, even if you only use 1. So if you had material 0, 0, or material square bracket 0, it'll override the wood, but it'll keep the other 2 in place. And it's probably too late in the day for them to fix this, but we can't remove these. Even if they are, if they're not used, they'd stay in the file. But I digress. Anyway, so yes, that's something to work with for SketchUp users to play around with and see if they can work on that and improve the process. So the two issues that have to be addressed are the origins of the objects, and I just need to double check the textures, make sure that it is actually bringing in the textures properly. So on that note, an hour and 12 minutes, didn't expect it to actually go on this long. So without further ado, but to answer your question, Leanna, yes, there are some Blender goodies coming, but they have to be sorted out first, and you will see them when you see them, I guess. Right, so cheerio everyone, and then so do all the, subscribe, click the button, do the thingamajiggery and what have you, because it does help. It's such a not a stereotypical thing to say. What's the word? The phrase? The way that the algorithms work, subscriptions and subscribing to things, clicking buttons, clicking like and all that sort of stuff, it actually does help. So even though everyone says it literally at the end or the beginning of their videos, and it's almost a very tired statement that everyone has to make, it does actually help. Oh, hello, Gaff. Yes, arrived late just as the doors are closing. As per usual. What was I saying? Oh yes, so subscribe, click the button, follow all the social medias and stuff. So final PSA repeat. That's PSA, public service announcement. Yes, the following presentation was for informational purposes only, and not an endorsement of the process. Use at your own risk. So don't poke your finger in a light socket. Seriously though. SketchUp Make, theoretically you're not supposed to do this, so you didn't hear it or see it here, but SketchUp Pro users, they have their own issues exporting now because the exporters are not available, but the process that we've been discussing is equally applicable to SketchUp Pro users as it is to SketchUp Make. Cheers, Gaff. That's yeah. Hello, sailor. Right, so until next time, keep creating and keep your eyes open for new videos or new stuff. So subscribe. Oh, we did all of that. Subscribe. Do all the socials things in the interwebs, just so that you're informed. And we shall see you next time. So bye for now, everyone.